My name is Sonia Bevington, and I'm the IFLAPARL Secretary, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today, as are my virtual event team colleagues, whom I'll introduce in a moment. Next slide, please. As you just heard, portions of this event will be recorded, including the question and answer portion. As audience members, your microphones are muted and the chat function is turned off, but we will be breaking periodically for short, moderated question and answer periods. The question and answer function should appear along the lower portion of your screen. You have the option to ask your questions anonymously, and you can also identify yourself in your question or rename yourself in your own settings. At our last event, our audience members signed their questions with their name and their jurisdiction, and we invite you to do the same. Feel free to use the question and answer to ask questions as they occur to you. You don't need to wait until the break. The question and answer at our last session was a very lively discussion. For those joining on the web browser version of Zoom, some of these features may not be available. In that case, you may be able to use the raise your hand button, although we may not be able to get to your question today. But with all the questions that we can't answer today, we will try to follow up after the event. Next slide, please. So allow me to introduce to you the team who have put this session together. Our technical lead is Ellie Valentine. She's the IFLAPARL Information Coordinator. And
Hi.
Ellie will also be moderating the question and answer sessions. Hi, Ellie. The slides have been put together by Karen Zoll and are run by Julie Anderson, who are standing committee members. I am your on-screen host and moderator. And on our team as well are Ian Watt, IFLAPARL Chair, who's also presenting today, Karen Feiner, standing committee member, and Janice Silveira, who was a presenter last week and who has supported the development of both sessions. This is our first virtual event, so a learning experience for all of us, and we will seek your feedback from both presenters and members of the audience after, as well as your ideas for future sessions. Next slide, please. And of course, the reason we're all here, I want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. This is our program, although we did have to make a few last-minute changes to it, and we'll see on the fly if we have to make any more. But thank you to our speakers for contributing. And we're well into my section. I promise I won't take up too much more time. But as you can see, we're looking at 3 panels and 3 question and answer sessions. I'll just note now that our final presenter, Paula Mandillo, was unable to be here, and we'll move to a video for her contribution today. Our total running time last time was right around 2 hours. I think we may be a little bit less than that since we did have 1 cancellation this morning. Next slide. I promise to keep it short. So I'm going to now introduce Ian Watt, IFLAPARL Chair, to give the first presentation on what was really the seed for this virtual event, the IFLAPARL survey on COVID-19 responses among library and research services for parliaments. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you all for attending. It's a very difficult hour. As you can see, it's a nice sunny day in Edinburgh. The first click, please. Thank you. The survey was conducted by IFLAPARL between May and August this year, asking library and research services in parliaments to share their experience in the pandemic using an online survey. And thanks to everyone who responded, there were 30 responses with pretty good global coverage. The report is anonymized. The respondents were offered a guaranteed anonymity in order that they could speak about problems and difficulties freely. And the report itself doesn't attempt to analyze or comment. It tries just to report what was said. The full text of the report is available at the link on the top right there of the screen. Next point. Thanks. And next one. To just give an overview of the impact of the the pandemic, around 1/3 of services reported that it had affected them a great deal, their services a great deal. That surprised me a bit because it means 2/3 actually felt the impact had been moderate or small. And I think it's the extent to which services had already switched to digital and remote service models. Next point. Thank you. And the one after. There's some difference in opinion actually as to the impact, the long-term impact of this. Some saw it as just a parenthesis, that things would go back to normal after the pandemic. Some saw it as accelerating an existing trend towards digital services, while a few saw it as really a transformative moment, a revolutionary moment where everything was going to change and radically, and some saw it as an opportunity to make radical change. Next slide. All organizations had issues with the pandemic, of course. There were some specific ones that affected parliamentary library and research services. The first being that there was no option to shut down or to go dormant because parliaments were actually very active and very much needing information, research to support scrutiny and to develop policy. So there was no option to choke the service back. Secondly, it really underlined how much parliaments depend on personal contacts and services depend on personal contacts and involvement in the processes of the parliament to be reinvented. And linked to that, the kind of artisanal, on-site, boutique services that we normally deliver to very high-value clients had to be reinvented for a remote service model. And for the bigger services, which have got integrated production processes with many different people involved, that had to be reinvented with most people working from home. And of course, the usual library issue of having unique collections and for research also expertise that's normally accessible only in person, how to reinvent that. And it all had to be done at very short notice. So those were the challenges that stood out from the survey responses. 4 key issues overall come out in general. First of all, digital services. Secondly, working from home. Thirdly, innovation. And fourthly, business continuity planning. We're on to digital service, and here the extent to which services had already moved into digital and the local environment, how digital was it already, that really determined it was for services to adapt. And was it already feasible for clients to use the service on-site digitally, and could staff already work in a remote way? Was it already possible? And if that wasn't the case, to what extent did services have the resources, the money, the IT support to actually adapt very quickly? And so services that were already digital or had the resources to adapt had an easier time. But nevertheless, creativity and innovation came into it. Some services which were not high on resources, not high on digital, found ways to deliver a service. So creativity was important. And you'll find out about that. Next slide, please. Working from home, it's a similar kind of story. Was there already experience in working from home? Those services which allowed people to work from home on an occasional basis in the past found it easier to implement it as a longer term arrangement. The local environment came into it. Did people have fast internet connections at home? What kind of typical domestic setup? Was there really somewhere to work as an office in the staff accommodation? And again, resources. Did they have resources to buy in maybe new laptops or office furniture, those kind of things? That helped. For managers, there were some really interesting challenges. Communication, bringing the team together in this new environment, responding to staff isolation and family pressures. These are big issues, psychological issues, and I think we're going to hear some more about that from some of the presenters. And of course, to note that with a very strongly female workforce, that there's a bit of a gender aspect to all this, that domestic duties were not necessarily evenly shared. Next slide, please. Innovation is what the event is about, so I'm not going to say too much about this. There were lots of really nice stories in the survey responses. The overall sort of issues that came out, one was a need to increase scientific information and advice, and there are various solutions to that, and more demand for comparative information, how other parliaments, other jurisdictions were dealing with the pandemic. And the second main point was that a new emphasis on information for citizens, repurposing information as information for citizens. Some of that was already happening, but it really seems to have become much more prominent and much more noticed by administrations in this pandemic. Next slide, please. And this one, this business continuity planning, an issue that's notable mainly by its absence. Only one service reported actually having a plan that they had used and found satisfactory. Some services had plans, but realized that they were actually for a different kind of crisis. Others were unaware of the concept of business continuity planning. It seems something that we should do, but the practical experience was not so convincing. Many people found they could adapt with just a little bit of notice. They could adapt and improvise. One or 2 weeks and they could have something. So I think this whole area of business continuity planning could be something useful to explore at a future IFLAPARL conference to share experience and ideas. And next slide, please. And the last point really that I want to mention is the concerns for the future that some services raised. And there were 4 sort of main areas. One was that they felt they had made exceptional efforts to maintain services in the pandemic in those months. And they were concerned that administrations would assume that this was normal and that they would be under severe pressure indefinitely into the future. And they were afraid they could not maintain that. So there's that issue, the question of expectations. The second issue was that despite the recognition that many services reported that they really felt appreciated by clients and by administrations for the response they had made in the pandemic, that the economic crisis that's reckoned to happen after this crisis or during this crisis will actually lead to reductions in their resources. And they felt that by adapting to the lack of on-site facilities, they would actually find their on-site facilities like reading rooms and offices under question at the end. That would be unfortunate, but that's life, I suppose. The third point that people raised really was to do with the fact that they had got through this pandemic because they had built up social capital in their teams, knowledge capital amongst the teams as well. And that was a capital that was going to deplete with isolation and of course, inevitably staff turnover over time, that the capital that they had invested in for years would deplete, and how could it be recovered and maintained in this new working environment. And then finally, some managers, some clients have not adapted well to this new environment. They were not maybe digital to begin with. They found it difficult. How can such people be supported and this transition be managed in the future in helping people to get through it? So that's it. That's the overview. I guess once again, thanks to everybody who contributed. I hope that we can maybe run a follow-up in future to build up our knowledge of this, to share our knowledge. And I'm really looking forward to this event. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Ian. I'll move right into our next presentation. Muyayeta Simui is representing the Pan-African Parliamentary Library, and I'll hand it over to you, Muyayeta, if you're ready to go. Just open your microphone and we should be able to hear you.
Okay, thank you, Sonia.
Perfect.
And good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, wherever you are located on our beautiful planet. Yeah, responsible for the development of the Pan-African Parliament is still a one-person library at the moment, but I have colleagues who are in documentation and research. So I'm representing the Pan-African Parliament, as Sonia has already said. The Pan-African Parliament is a continental legislative organ of the African Union. The PAP exercises consultative and advisory powers and also makes model laws for the continent. PAP is hosted and located in South Africa. We are hosted by the Republic of South Africa in Johannesburg, Midrand specifically. And there are 270 members of parliament from the 54 member states. The members have dual responsibilities. They are MPs in their own countries and also members of the Pan-African Parliament. So as such, they reside in their home countries. They only come to PAP when we have sittings. We have sittings 4 times a year, 2 committee sittings in March and August, and plenary sessions in May and October. So for this year, 2019, due to the COVID, we were lucky enough to have the committee sittings earlier on in the year before the lockdowns happened. So after that, we received communication and advice from our headquarters in Africa, the African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, that all organs should adopt remote-based operations. So as the Secretariat, we started operating remotely a week before our host, South Africa, announced the lockdown on 23rd March. For us, lucky enough, each staff has a laptop. So it's easy. It was easy for us to operate from home, and the office decided to give us data bundles and airtime that was loaded directly to each one's phone, so that to facilitate our communication, online meetings, and internet access. Initially, especially with the office communication letters that needed signing, the drivers were picking the letters and then taking to the signees. So it was a bit difficult, also risky of infection. So the Secretariat adopted some technologies like Zoom for meetings and Microsoft Teams for collaborating within units, small groups, and DocuSign for office letters and memos. WhatsApp was already there. We have WhatsApp groups for messaging. Yeah, so we received the training. Yeah, all staff were trained online to be able to use the adopted remote technologies. And we noticed that the flow of letters, especially memos from one signee to the other, became quite efficient compared to when we are in the office. And in addition, the Secretariat also facilitated a number of meetings for the members and remote collaboration with other organizations. So the members were able to participate in the African Union meetings, were able to participate in the CDC African Center for Disease Control briefings, and other meetings with institutions like the Commonwealth Parliamentary Assembly. Yeah, so, and when the lockdown eased or relaxed for the office, only 50% of staff were allowed to be in office each week. So we take turns to come to the office now that the lockdown has been relaxed. In terms of the library operations, yeah, we continued with the colleague, the research staff, to provide background information, mainly for the members, especially the vice presidents who were participating in the virtual meetings. And we also continue to facilitate access to paid for and free online information resources to the staff mainly. Yeah, so, and the challenge with the access to information to these resources was that when we are in the office, the service providers provided us with access through our IP address. Now, when we are not in the office, it was a bit difficult and they could not provide passwords to individuals. So service providers like PressReader gave specific URL keys to managers and professional staff. So not all the staff could be able to access the resources. As a result of that, together with service providers and the IT department, we are exploring some technologies that may facilitate access from a single point via the institutional website or as apps that we can access on our phones or on our laptops. For example, as the office, we are looking at MyLoft, which was introduced to us by one of the service providers. But we are also open to look at other available options. Maybe colleagues have other technologies that you are aware of. It will be good to share with us. In terms of lending materials, we resumed after the lockdown, mainly to the staff. Acquisition now, we are looking at targeting more of online resources. Home-based work, we continued with uploading and indexing of institutional documents, most of which are born digital. And we also upload some of them onto the African Union Commission, African Knowledge Base digital repository. This will provide with the Pan-African Parliament documents a wider access. The next slide. Yeah, so the challenges have been there, but we've managed, like Ian was talking about the results of the survey, like social distancing, some staff maybe live alone. So it was a challenge, but when we meet virtually, it eases that loneliness. The committee sittings, the members wanted to come in November now that the world is opened up, but because of the increasing infection rates, it was advised against, so we couldn't have the meeting last month. Also, in terms of participation of the members in the virtual meetings that were available, it was a bit difficult for some of them because some countries have not developed at the same level in terms of technological access, network stability, and so forth. So those were some of the challenges. Specifically for the library, the reinstallation of the Symphony and Novation systems upgrades, which were planned for this year, we haven't been able to because of the need and requirement to maintain social distancing. So we hope and pray that this pandemic will go away so that we begin to operate normally next year. Yeah, so we wish everyone safety and great festive season. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for organizing this virtual meeting. It's nice to see all of you.
Thank you, Muyayeta. It's wonderful to see you. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
The final presenter in our first panel, we'll move on to that one, and that's Jennifer Carmody. Jennifer is the Assembly Librarian in the Office of the Legislative Assembly for the Australian Capital Territory. Jennifer.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, hello. Good morning or good evening. It's 9:25 here for me in Australia. I gave my talk the title "A Tale of Transitions" because it feels like everything we're doing is a transition every single day. So next slide. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our library and our clients. So the ACT Legislative Assembly has 25 members. It's a unicameral assembly, so it only has a house, a single house, and it's the only parliament in Australia that has responsibility for both state and territory functions as well as local government functions. The Assembly Library actually predates self-government, which came to us in 1989. So our library originally served the federal department that was responsible for the administration of the territory. So Canberra is the seat of the federal government, and until 1989, the federal government administered all the functions of the territory. Now, we lack a territorial library, so our library, the Assembly Library, retains the responsibility of serving the public service as well as the Legislative Assembly and their members. So with 25 members and staff and committee staff, that's about 100 people, but the ACT Public Service is about 23,000 people. So we serve both of these cohorts with a staff of 4 professional librarians, one of whom is part-time. So it's about 3.7 FTE. Next slide. We are really used to providing a virtual service. Most of our clients have never set foot in our library. Even when we loan books, we send them through inter-office mail. So our services really didn't change at all. The only thing that changed for us was our workplace and the way we worked together. And we had a great advantage being in the Southern Hemisphere because we were about 2 weeks behind. The Northern Hemisphere was shut down. So that gave us quite a bit of time to panic and plan and practice our services and offering them while we were remote from the library. I did not have a business contingency plan. I didn't really have that language, but we were reviewing all of our services at this time anyway. And I was quite new to my role. I had been with the library for less than a year when shutdown happened. We had a lot of support. So we had departmental support. When we were sent home, we had the option of having our hardware delivered to us. So if we needed monitors or office chairs or any kind of equipment, they sent those to our homes if we needed it. And we also had support from the ACT government in the form of leave. So if we needed to be on leave to quarantine because we had been exposed to somebody with COVID-19, we were able to take that leave without tapping into our personal leave or our annual leave. And importantly for my staff, parents supporting school-aged children were able to use that leave as well. So when all of our students were home, and 3 out of 4 of my staff do have school-aged children, when the kids were home and we needed to help them with their work, and that encroached upon our time for working at our jobs, we were able to take leave for that. That didn't come out of annual leave, and that was all pre-approved. So that was a huge help. Next slide. So our challenges, I mean, we all have shared these challenges. Not having access to our physical collection was a challenge. We had IT issues, interestingly enough, not usually with the IT we had at home, but our access to the IT that the office was providing. So we had some things we couldn't do initially by logging in remotely. So over time, those were resolved. I think one of the biggest challenges I had personally and my staff had was creating physical workspaces at home. So we didn't have a culture of working at home prior to this, and we all had to create a physical workspace while at the same time creating workspaces for our children as well. So there was a lot of scrambling for a little while there. We had some very unique challenges to our library. We had started out with a staff of 5, and one person had retired shortly before we were all shut down. And one of the things I did during this period was a staff restructure. So we went from a staff of 5 to a staff of 4, but we increased the seniority of the staff that we had. So we had we went from a staff that included paraprofessionals to a staff that were all professionals. So everyone in the library was either acting in a position or new to their position during this period. We also did a recruitment during shutdown, And all of these things were very challenging. And then along with that, we had some enhancements to technical systems. We had migrated to a new library management system about 15 minutes before we all went home. And so there was challenges with that as well. Another challenge we had was an introduction of new workflows. My office mandated daily reporting. So every person had to send an email each day to their managers explaining what they had done during the day. So I received a daily report from all of my staff. I sent a daily report up to my manager, and I consolidated all of those reports into a weekly productivity report. And then our final really large challenge was just finding our communication stride. So if you know, sometimes things arise that you could resolve in 10 or 15 minutes of conversation, and you try to put that in email and you have days of threads. So figuring out when it was good to email, when we needed to pick up the phone, when we needed to do a web conference, those are all sort of things we're still adjusting to. Next slide. So my sort of takeaway from this experience is that, you know, everything we do, everything we've done this year has been a transition, and transitions take enormous amounts of energy. And I think it's important to recognize that this is really hard, and it continues to be hard. And even returning to the office is a transition and a challenge. So we're really lucky here in Australia that our students in the ACT went back to school after about 2 months, and we're now in the process of transitioning back into the workplace. But in the library, our workspace is so small, we can't socially distance. So we're doing it in shifts and just figuring out which way is going to be the best way, what combination, and that all evolves. As a manager, I think I've been really fortunate with the timing of this pandemic, because with that daily reporting, as much as we all sort of didn't love it, I really got a much deeper understanding of my staff as they leaned into their new positions. And it was a bird's eye view that I would not have had we not had that daily reporting requirement. And I'm really looking forward, and my library staff is really looking forward to a future where we're going to be able to continue to blend working from home with work in the library. And I think that's just going to make us all that much more productive and happier in the future. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So that concludes our first of 3 panels, and we'll move now into the question and answer period. So if you just take a look at the bottom of your screen, you should see the question and answer function. If you're able to direct your question to a specific speaker or speakers, that would be helpful, and we'll answer the questions verbally. Again, this is moderated and limited by time, so we apologize if we don't ask your question of the presenters, but you can use the IFLAPARL COVID-19 forum to continue the conversation. If you want to register, please contact Ellie Valentine, and you see the email there on the screen. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ellie Valentine, who will moderate our first question and answer period. Ellie.
Thank you, Sonia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm delighted to welcome everyone again. I'm going to start with a question for all 3 panelists. And I think it speaks to this question of how we're dealing with staff as people and human beings. For Muyioto, it's interesting that what happens when you're a 1-person facility and you go to 50% participation on-site with other colleagues, and did you switch with people from other services and share responsibility for your services? And then a general question for all of you. As Jennifer said, there was some accommodation for special leave, or that was pre-approved, but was there any evidence of wellness programs for staff? For example, programs that would help them to cope with the lack of interaction with colleagues, or even with the anxiety of how COVID was going to affect them or their communities, health-wise or economic-wise. So I'll give it back to the panelists.
Jennifer, do you have some thoughts on that?
We did have some webinars that the ACT government sponsored about sort of mindfulness and well-being and parenting. Nothing that really spoke very specifically to economic well-being. We have been really fortunate in the ACT and in Australia, and there's been strong government programs to support people economically during this time in the form of JobKeeper and JobSeeker. Those are federal programs. But I guess nothing that really spoke to COVID-19 particularly, although we do have an EAP program that we're all encouraged regularly to call and talk if we feel the need for that.
Muyota, do you want to speak to how you shared responsibilities of returning for in-person services with other services when you're a one-person library?
What happened is we started this office operations on 1st October. So our supervisors came up with the schedule where each staff was allocated 2 days in the week to go to the office. So for me, I come to the office on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But whenever a staff wants to borrow a material, then I agree with that staff on the time that we can come to the office and they borrow the material. In terms of support to staff, the office organized, put in place a committee that was like collecting information, briefing the staff, and also receiving information from individual staff who needed help. So the committee would find a way of assisting such staff. Yeah, because there were concerns like, for example, single mothers with the children. Yeah. They worry like, if I fall sick, what will happen to my children? Yeah, but fellow staff were willing to, if such happened, were willing to take in the children and look after them. Yeah.
It's very special. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a question from our attendees. This is Dr. Juan de Diego Chianucay from Argentina. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced your last name. And this is a question for all of the panelists. Could you please explain with statistics and examples the kind of research services you have provided and are providing to the parliamentarians during the pandemic? It would be useful to have a detailed description of those services, including, in particular, the outcome products. What kinds of reports, for example? So what kind of research?
Well, I'll jump in. We, my library, we do not do research ourselves. We provide reference and research support. So we don't create briefings or talking points or research briefs, nothing like that.
With the Pan-African Parliament, the colleague in research would ask for information. They assign or ask him to prepare a paper on a certain topic for the members who are attending a certain meeting. So he would do research on that topic and come up with points or briefings for the members. Mainly it was the vice presidents who were representing the organization in these different meetings. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the type of research that was being done by the colleague in the research department, and he was writing these briefings. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, I'll answer the first question as well. The things from the survey in terms of support for people that stood out. One was the idea of having team meetings online not necessarily because there was big business issues to discuss, but simply as a way of reinforcing contacts. There was one, I remember one respondent in particular saying that they really insisted on having these meetings to keep the team together. And there was some other indications of that. The second was that an impression from some that actually the new working arrangements had led them to communicate with all staff in a much more structured and systematic way than if they'd been in the office. So they had to go around all of the staff and talk to them about what was going on. I think I recall that some actually felt they had a better idea of what people did and how they were progressing in the new situation compared to being in the office, where I suppose things were taken for granted. Regarding research, I don't really have statistics, but I think the production of research continued. The demand was still there. The need was still there. There was much more interest in scientific information. And this has led some services, at least, to reach out and find new partners in the academic and institutional world to bring in expertise, which they didn't have. I think it's quite common that parliamentary research services may be a bit short on scientific expertise. So that was something they sought to remedy. That there was, as time went on, there was more emphasis on economic issues, that the feeling that they had to respond to an economic crisis as well as a health one, and that there was much more interest in that later on in the process. Throughout, a lot of interest in comparative information, what other parliaments were doing, what other jurisdictions were doing. So those, I don't know if there was, I didn't detect any major change to research products as such, because the digital products were very common, and if they didn't have them, they introduced them. And those were the main sort of topical areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Sonia, we don't have any other questions if we're ready to move on to our next panel.
I think we are. Thank you, Ellie. So let's move into that panel. We'll start with Walid Al-Badi. Walid is the director of the Majlis Oman Library. Walid, if you're ready, please go ahead. Walid, I see your microphone is muted. If you could open that and we can hear you.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon all. First of all, I want to thank you and all your team for this virtual event. I am so glad also to be here and to be part of it. And also let me extend my thanks to all my friends and colleagues in IFLAP for their help and support to conduct this survey. And this presentation, I am going to share some results about my survey, how parliamentary libraries in Asia and the Pacific responded to the effects of COVID-19. In mid of May, the idea of studying the effects of COVID-19 on parliamentary libraries came up. So I proposed to conduct this survey to my colleagues in IFLAP, and they agreed on that. After that, I designed the survey, and the main aim was to study the effect of COVID-19 on library buildings, service and users, and library staff, library and community, and the pandemic and future. This survey was intended for all members of IFLAP. It was sent to the IFLAP's mailing list and was published in the IFLAP Facebook account. 13 responses came from 13 countries, and the survey was conducted in last July. In the first section, we asked them about building, service, and users, and we asked them about, did the libraries close their buildings during COVID-19 pandemic? And we can found that 15% of the participating library confirmed that they were fully closed to public, but not to parliamentary employees or to staff, to library staff. Then we asked them about, did the library shifted to online and remote service? And we can found that more than 58% of the participating library providing their service via internet. However, libraries during that faced many challenges, like technical challenge, copyright issue for digital books, and also librarians need to be more creative and do online promotion, and also they have to work on raising the library users' awareness about the electronic services. And also, most of the library users are not aware of services that have been shifted to the online platform. Then we ask the users. We ask them about the users. Did users respond to the challenge and accept online and remote service? And it's noted from the response of the participating library that the most library users, more than 91%, have responded and support the shift of libraries to electronic service, which indicates the awareness of the library users of the importance of electronic service. We can explain that because some people still fear about infection of COVID-19. So using the online or remote service maybe will reduce the possibility of meeting people in the library. Also, we asked them about, did users have access to computer? Are they providing with proper information on how to use the online and remote service? And we can find that more than 83% of the participating libraries said that their users have access to computers and are provided with proper information on how to use the online and remote service in different platforms. And also we asked them if there's any change in information seeking behavior during this pandemic. 85% of the participating library reported that there are no change in the users' interest and topics researched during COVID-19 crisis. However, 41% of the participating library reported that there are some change, like increase in health requests related to COVID-19, and also focus on economic impact and how to recover from this pandemic. And also we asked them about what are the most important aspects of the library's financial response to reduce the impact of this pandemic. There are many sectors or activities that are directly affected by COVID-19, like future plans, staff benefits, and hiring. And also there are some effects on programs and acquisition budget, but there is no effect on electronic resource, salaries, and professional development programs, and that's good. Then let's move, next slide, please. Let's move to the library and staff. We asked them about if they are working from the library or from home, and we found that 58 of the participating library have some of their staff working from the library and some working from home. On the other hand, 33% had their staff working at home. And we asked them if have the library staff been educated about the virus and ways to prevent it, and we found all participating library stated that their staff have been educated about the virus and ways to prevent it. And of course, working from home is different than working inside the library. And we asked them if there's any change, if there's any challenge they face them by working from home. And we found the limited resource like laptops, cell phones, and Wi-Fi connection. Maybe sometimes they face some technical challenge. Also limited access to printed resource. Most people prefer face-to-face contact in meeting, for example, and also balance between work and life, and isolation from library teams, and finally, the time. The third section of the survey, we asked them about the library and community. And we asked about how has the library supported the crisis response in the community. And we can find that all participating library have made it clear that the library plays a role in supporting the response efforts of COVID-19 in the community, like providing information and providing some other services like free Wi-Fi. Finally, we asked them about the pandemic and future, and we asked about, does the library have any advanced crisis management plan? Unfortunately, 58% of the participating library do not have an advanced crisis management plan. And this can be justified because the whole world did not expect this pandemic. But I think the most change in the future. But I think this must change in the future. Librarians should learn the lesson from this pandemic and also prepare a plan for the future. On the other hand, the study shows that 41% of the participating library have an advanced crisis management plan. Most of these libraries launched a digital platforms which contain many information that may be accessed remotely. Will this pandemic affect the library's emergency preparation in the coming years? And we found almost all of the participating library, more than 91%, said that this pandemic affected the library's emergency in the coming years, as the libraries will make an additional effort in design an emergency plan to ensure the providing of service in the event of any other crisis in the future. I think preparation is one of the most important lessons learned from COVID-19 pandemic. Then we asked him about, do you think this pandemic has a long-term impact on the library? And we found half of the participating library believes that this pandemic has no long-term impact on the libraries. However, the other half believes that this pandemic has consequences that will appear later in the future and will affect the libraries and their work, as this library believe that the position of libraries is closely related to the financial condition of the country, and any impact of the financial situation of the country will definitely affect the libraries as well. And finally, we asked him about what are the most important plans and ideas that the library learned from this pandemic. We are still in this pandemic. A large number of countries are still suffering from these effects. Some libraries were not prepared enough to deal with this pandemic. However, the most important thing is what do we learn from this difficult time and how we can extract lessons for this pandemic and learn from them to prepare for the future. In conclusion, I think in future, the libraries must be ready with more of the online resources and online services. And also libraries should increase digital library materials instead of printed materials. And libraries need to be more flexible to the needs of user. And also they have to have a crisis management plan. This is all what I want to share with you. And I want to thank you again for your efforts to conduct or to organize this online virtual event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Walid. The next speaker in this panel, many of us had the pleasure of meeting on his home turf in Athens, Dr. Fotis Tsitsilis. Fotis will now be using visual slides. He's just going to speak to us, so we'll keep this slide up while he speaks. Please go ahead, Fotis.
Hi to everybody. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, indeed.
It's a true pleasure to be in a panel with such distinguished colleagues, and it's an even greater pleasure to be part of this vital event from the Parliaments and Library section of IFLA. This is a true important, significant webinar, because after all, what is missing during such a really disruptive situation like a pandemic, what we fail to provide is usually information and information exchange. So the very existence of this webinar bridges this gap. And this is exactly the gap that happens when we have a disruption, a gap between the service and its customers. And this is I'm going to tackle in my brief discussion. It won't take long. Hopefully, we will have much more time for the discussion afterwards with everybody that attends. allow me a very brief observation. The pandemic is not over. It's not over yet. This is something that we need to have in mind, which means that everything that we report, that we discuss, is subject to further changes. Second, the Hellenic Parliament in Greece, like almost every other parliament anywhere, was disrupted in a severe way in its operation. And in the lockdown situations, we are currently in a lockdown situation. I'm at home right now. It operates under safety personnel with a very small percentage of employees overall. And this percentage is managed centrally. So we're not allowed simply to step by and pick up some documents or else. So everything needed to go online, to be formed in a digital way at the very beginning without much preparations. Hopefully, we had there some huge advantage as a scientific service, because we were used to operate in a decentralized manner. But why is that? Why the Hellenic Parliament was used in such a decentralized operation as regards its scientific service? Well, to understand that, allow me very briefly to explain you what are the basic parts of our work and which are our main customers. The main pieces of work that we conduct are twofold. First, we conduct a legal technical assessment of the incoming bills, of the laws that are entering the parliament. And second, we offer legal technical opinions to the ones that are asking for them. These are legal reporting, more or less. Now, who requests this kind of work? That's the interesting part. Unlike most of the parliaments that I know, we have only one customer. That's very interesting. The Hellenic Parliament Research Service has only one major customer, and this is the institution as such, or the ones that are representing the institution, which is the speaker. Well, this is not the full truth, since technically, anybody that would like to ask the research service a question can submit it through the speaker, but it happens in very rare cases. So it was very easy for us to go online. We continued what we already did before the pandemic, because it's a one-to-one exchange. The head of our research service towards the service, the office of the speaker, the bureau of the speaker, or the legislative bureau, in order for us to deliver the legal reports to bills. This can be done, of course, online, and it has happened. So we migrated directly online. That's a very interesting use case to report on. Finally, what indeed has changed is our mentality on how to approach the working operations and the parliament per se. We're starting making up our minds on how to use novel legal informatics tools and services to deliver open legal information, open legal data to our customers and to the world. And we tried everything that we do to pack them in scientific articles and submit them to acknowledged journals, so that everybody also has something from this experience. Thank you again for the invitation, and I am at your disposal for any questions.
Thank you so much, Fotis. We have one more presentation before we move into the question and answer, but we will come back to you at that point. It's my pleasure now to introduce Anthony Teasdale. He's the Director General of the European Parliamentary Research Service. And if you're ready, Anthony, we'd love to hear your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk with you. It's a great pleasure. I hope you can see and hear me clearly.
Absolutely.
Obviously, as for all other parliamentary research services and libraries worldwide, the coronavirus crisis has been both a huge shock and a massive challenge. And we've all been disoriented by the need suddenly to leap forward, perhaps decades, certainly years, in terms of the type of products, services, and processes that we offer and operate. I'm going to focus my remarks on, excuse me, I'm going to focus my remarks specifically on one big change which we introduced, which was digital events. Previously, all our events were held physically. Now, inevitably, all of them are being held digitally. We had hoped at one stage that we might be able to do hybrid events, so half physical, half online, but that proved for practical purposes impossible. Everything else that we do as a parliamentary research service, our confidential replies to members' research inquiries, our wide range of publications, our support for parliamentary committees in the policy cycle, our response to citizens' inquiries, they've all continued, as indeed have many of our library services, but they too have moved digital very rapidly. There's been a big explosion in the use of ebooks and in use of various apps or directly subscriptions that we have to newspapers, journals, and magazines and so on. But I'm not going to talk so much about that. I'd like to talk about events. Part of the EPRS approach has been to use our library reading room, which you can see there on this first slide, to use that as a kind of center for exchange, a kind of agora in which people would come to discuss policy issues, to discuss books, to discuss current affairs. And we decided to go down that route for several different reasons. At the most basic, we wanted to get more people from the parliamentary community into our library reading room. Some of you, if you've been to EPRS events or ECPRD events that we've held there, will know that room quite well. And it's very, very large, it's very modern, it's very attractive, and it's also physically located at the actual heart of the parliamentary complex in Brussels. But because it's on the 5th floor, it's not, people don't sort of just walk through it, they have to consciously choose to go there. So especially with very high turnovers of members, the Euro election before last, we had a 50% turnover of members. And in the last Euro election in 2019, we had a 63% turnover in members. It's very important to constantly renew people's knowledge of the library reading room and encourage them, their staff and others to use it on a day-to-day basis. So we decided very early on when EPRS was created 7 years ago that we would use the library reading room as this kind of spiritual home, if you like, for the research service, because people would say, well, where is the research service? And of course, it's in some sort of anonymous bureaucratic office setting. The library offered us a choice to make that more human and make that more personal. And that was critically important. But we also wanted a center for reflection, less partisan, a less confrontational environment in which people could discuss things dispassionately. And we've tried to organize quite a lot of events around that. We do, in addition to the stellar scientific foresight events, which we do normally about 60 or 70 policy or other events of a substantive research-related kind in the library reading room per year. So the sudden announcement at the end of February that all meetings in the Parliament were being abolished, and then in March, the move first to 80% and then to 100% teleworking meant that obviously we could no longer have these meetings at all. There would be no posters advertising them to be seen on the Parliament's walls. There would be no life in the reading room because the reading room was closed. There was little opportunity, if you like, directly to project the kind of work we were doing to outside partners by having these kind of communal discussions. We thought long and hard about whether or not to go digital, and our initial response or initial reaction was really very cautious. But we decided to look at the offer that others, particularly think tanks and international organizations, were making in this field. And we gradually developed the confidence in which to experiment a little bit. And we did that, first of all, by holding book talks online. Book talks are perhaps organizationally one of the more straightforward types of events that we organize, because you have relatively few participants. You, at the very least, have to have the author of the book and somebody to either chair or discuss, or both, with that person. And we also had to find the technical means to do this, because we were not allowed, for internal reasons within the Parliament, to use the Zoom platform, which is being used for this particular event today. We had to use one of those platforms that was available, and there was very limited bandwidth, in effect, for larger meetings. And it was obviously prioritized around meetings of parliamentarians. So we had to work all of that out, which we did. And we started with book talks, and it turned out to be much more successful than we had feared, or indeed dared to hope. We were consistently getting over 100 participants in book talks online, sometimes significantly higher than that, whereas previously for a book talk, we would have perhaps between 50 and 100 people. And that more generally was a pattern that we found when we became more ambitious in the approach that we took, that we consistently got more people in the digital room than we were getting in the physical room. Of course, conversely, there were many disadvantages. People, it was less easy to have a spontaneous conversation with a certain dynamic to it. The chairing of the meeting became more important. The boredom factor could kick in more easily because you didn't have people actually physically present with you, and they'd made the choice as to how they were going to allocate that time. And of course, people couldn't personally network if they wanted, either before or after the meeting. But that pattern has been maintained. We hit the highest, I would say, in all, in an event which we do every year with other institutions, the so-called ESPAS conference, Interinstitutional Conference on Global Trends, where we had over 1,000 participants at some stage over the 2 days. Whereas normally for an ESPAS conference, we would be lucky if we had 300 people over the 2 days. Our library reading room will take around about 150 people physically at any one time. Now, what lessons did we learn from this process? Well, one was preparation is critical. The second is that you need to do rehearsals and coaching of those who are speaking. Obviously, with outside guests, that's a bit more difficult, but with our own people. It's very, very important to have a kind of technical test beforehand where everybody confirms that they have the equipment which is compatible and they have worked out how to do the connection successfully. And also that technical test, if you can get the various speakers together, offers a unique opportunity in effect for them to discuss in advance how the meeting's going to go. Something which is often quite difficult when you're organizing a physical meeting. Let me give a very concrete example of that. Yesterday afternoon, we did an event which I was chairing with the International Monetary Fund. The new European director at the IMF in Washington participated online from DC, and we had 3 economists who are largely Brussels based responding to that. So when we did the technical test, we were able to get all those participants together and discuss exactly how we wanted to play the meeting, who was going to say what, where, when. Of course, we didn't go into precise detail, but it really helped me as the chair because I had a sense of the direction in which the meeting was likely to go, and we could plan the order of interventions to try and get the best possible synergy and the best possible dynamic. And the fact that we had somebody speaking from Washington itself showed that we were able to get people, of course, from all over the world. And we did that just before the US presidential election, pretty spectacularly, when we had an online discussion with think tankers and academics with, I think it was either 5 or 6 people speaking from the East Coast of the United States. Timing, of course, then becomes an issue. But what we have also discovered is that in a way, timings are more flexible because digital meetings can occur at any time during the day. And the rigid format in which we always had committee meetings from 9 or 9:30 till just before lunch, and then a 2-hour gap, and then committee meetings for 3 hours in the afternoon, has been scrambled for technical reasons in terms of availability of different digital platforms in the Parliament. And now we can hold our meetings at other times rather than just strictly at lunchtime or strictly in the early evening. So we got more flexibility in that. Another thing that we learned was it was very important to have good visuals. That, for example, one of the book talks we did, an early one, was with the former British MEP Michael Cashman, who you may know from Neighbours, the BBC soap opera, who was a MEP for many years in the Parliament and very much a LGBT campaigner. And he has recently produced a autobiography, which has a large number of really interesting photographs about his life. And we use some of those photos online to bring the event alive. And visuals really do help. We learned that very early on. We also discovered, and many of the people here perhaps are discovering it through this very conversation that we're having in the auspices of IFLAPARL, that it really is much less intrusive on people's schedules if they have the opportunity to participate in a business-related discussion of this kind without having to travel. And so we were very delighted when we got a very high participation in the ECBRD conference, which we hosted about 4 or 5 weeks ago through the EPRS. We like to do something every October or November for parliamentary research services and libraries Europe-wide. That was great. And we were also able to have joining us Heather Lank, who I think is also participating in this event, coming in from Canada, and somebody from the Congressional Research Service and so on in Washington. And we're very open to wider participation of this kind, using exactly this kind of vehicle in the future. Finally, how are we going to go forward? I think that the future is digital, but it's probably also hybrid, in that I feel that what we should try to do is, if we can, meld these two patterns together and try to get the best of both worlds. Try to have a situation in which we always have a digital dimension, in which being a digital speaker is exactly equal to being a physical speaker, but we nonetheless have people coming together in the library reading room or wherever else we hold those events as a means of re-establishing human contact, networking, personal communion, if you like, between people in a non-religious way. That is very, very important, I think, in terms of what it is that we're about and our values and our philosophy. And we would like to try and get the best of those two worlds, ride those two horses together if we can. So I never see us going back to entirely physical events unless they're very, very small. I always think there will be a digital dimension. I hope that the experience that we're having, and as I say, we've significantly increased participation, and we're finding that that short incident that's just come up shows part of the ESPAS conference, which we hosted, and we were able to have a discussion between Madeleine Albright, who was sitting in Washington, Jim Close, who was in the Council Secretariat, who was acting as the moderator, and David McAllister, the chair of the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, on the implications of a Biden presidency. We would never really have, I think, got Madeleine Albright to come to the event, but we were able to get her and a number of other distinguished guests for that ESPAS thing, because it was done digitally. So we want to try and capitalize on that experience and that success, and hopefully it's something from which others can learn. And if we can help in any way to share our experience, our team would be really delighted to do so. So I think I'll leave it at that, and thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words about this.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you as well to Fotis and to Walid. And this brings us to our next question and answer period. Ellie, I can hand it over to you if you're ready.
Great, thank you, Sonia, and thank you to our speakers. I want to remind everyone that you can, of course, write your question in the question box until we have one from among our attendees. I have a question that I'd like to put to all three of our speakers, and that is the demand on your products has increased in a different way, perhaps more vigorously needed by the public because of the information gap, or as Anthony said on his slides, the infodemic. And so I wonder if you could speak to how you are promoting your products more vigorously to the public to address this problem of fake news or skepticism about information that is coming out regarding the pandemic. So either Fotis or Walid or Anthony, if you could speak to that question.
Ellie, I'm probably not the best person to respond to that question, since we have just one customer, and this is the Parliament as such. So we do not directly refer or respond to comments or to questions from the general public or from the citizens or interested persons. However, everything that we do, or sort of more or less, unless it's confidential, is being put online. So in this particular case, we couldn't detect any spike, any rise, significant rise into for our services, since our services are valued, equally valued throughout time, because we apart from technical advice, we offer also legal / constitutional advice. And as you might guess, such type of information or reporting is very useful for the parliamentary leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Fotis.
Can I say something?
Anthony? Sure,
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, obviously, unlike Fotis, we have in a way 3 different clients. Our core constituency, of course, are members, and we always prioritize them. And we've especially prioritized them during this period of coronavirus because, you know, they have been suffering, especially the outward-facing political personality, which is very often very extrovert, suffers from this idea of isolation, of atomization, of being kept away from the room where the action is. So of course we prioritize those, but we also have the wider parliamentary community, and indeed we have the general public, and the general public takes 2 forms. One is readership outside the Parliament of our publications. I mean, we generate the better part of 1,000 publications on average each year, and we will attain probably about 850 or so this year. And we find that the demand for them is growing continuously, partly because our back catalogue is getting bigger and more sophisticated, and partly because we're just better known than we were in the past. But we also respond to citizens' inquiries, and it varies between about 50 and 80,000, sometimes even 100,000 a year. So we have these 3 different markets, and we have to juggle between them. But I would say that what we have tried to do, certainly with the members and the wider parliamentary community, is become over time their trusted friend, the people that they know they can rely upon for neutral, competent information and analysis. And that reputation, which we frankly have put a lot of effort into trying to build, has, I think, carried us through the crisis. But we've also diversified our product range in the crisis. For example, the newsletter that we send out regularly to the whole Parliament with all our new publications, and of course people can subscribe directly to them as well, now draws attention to other trusted outside sources. Previously, we only showcased the things that we were doing in EPRS. Now, because people really want to know about the crisis, and because it's so technical and complicated, we're drawing attention routinely to what scientific bodies, academic bodies, think tanks and so on are doing in this field, and particularly where it has a clear political implication. Likely to interest the members. So that was an important part of it. And the second was to make sure that the library services that we were offering, the digital, increasingly digital library services, were easy to access. We put a lot of effort into making them easily downloadable. I mean, previously, for example, some of these services were only available if at least once every 5 days or 2 weeks or whatever, you were on the Parliament premises and connected to the EP Wi-Fi system. Now we've really constructed a situation where 24/7 people can access them wherever they are in the world. That was quite complicated to kind of disentangle and sort out, but having achieved it, it's meant that people can now use the Parliament digital library services more easily when they're outside the building. almost as easily as if they're in. And of course, if that's their sort of automatic go-to place, in part because it's free, but also because it's all together, then of course they know that they're getting reliable services, which are in a world where truth is at a premium.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony, for that. And now we do have a question from among our attendees. Again, our colleague from Argentina, Juan de Dios Cincaditano, and to all the lecturers, beyond the difficulties generated by the pandemic, shouldn't there come a new era of digital libraries, and particularly of research services, including scientific, technological, and innovation research services? How often do you think the research services are going to be improved by the introduction of better communication and information technologies? Anthony Teasdale referred to the necessity to find a balance between the physical and the digital presence. Do you support a more digitalized than physical parliamentary research service? And which is your vision about the future in this regard?
Well, Anthony had organized just a couple of weeks ago a full webinar on that today conference around this ECPRD network. So it's a very complicated topic to put on the table for about a minute. I would say that the future is disruptive, just like the pandemic is. And it's very tough to predict exactly, because these new tools that are being tested or are already available will transform the way libraries and research services operate. Allow me just to share an experience with you. I have circulated in a very small circle of colleagues in parliaments a questionnaire regarding the parliament of the future. And more than half of the colleagues sent me an email back, said, Fotis, I can't read the question, I can't understand what's inside. So these new technologies, and I have put there some really state-of-the-art things, are not even perceivable, understandable by our colleagues in parliaments. It will be very tough for standalone organizations to put this through, this digital transformation Juan de Dios Cincunegui is talking about from Argentina. It would be better to cooperate with instances like the IPU, who has a center for parliamentary innovation, to build regional hubs exactly as they foresee, and to try to cooperate with this private and the academic sector as well, in order to build reliable tools and services with added value for us and the people that request and require our services. Thank you.
More specific to parliamentary libraries than to other libraries, you think?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Walid or Anthony, do you want to address this question? Or I guess, Anthony, you've done it in a 2-day conference.
Well, I'm happy to, perhaps Walid go first.
Yeah, Walid?
Okay. So I will add something about the fake news, and we can say the misinformation and disinformation, because really in that time, I am speaking about this pandemic. We faced a lot of problems about that misinformation. A lot of fake information came about the vaccine, about the way to prevent this virus. So what I noted from the survey, the parliamentary libraries in Asia and the Pacific, they play a very important role with the government to providing the information about this virus. They are providing information and also the numbers about the infection and how can we prevent this virus. And also some of the libraries said they are providing information from their website they are just put a specific homepage. It's all about the virus. It's all about corona, and all the correct information about coronavirus. Because as I said before, a lot of fake news show up, and a lot of people really don't know what's the good news and what's the wrong news. So this is all what I note from my survey.
Thank you so much, Waleed. Thank you.
So I would say that I mean that the future is disruptive, and it's also disrupted, and we've got to be pretty fleet of foot in how we respond, and not just you know, kind of constantly go back to classic products. We need to evolve them. Now, one of the ways that we can do that, I think, is by having added emphasis upon audiovisual communication, multimedia as it would now be known, short quick fire briefings and videos of various kinds, infographics, but also animated infographics. People seem to quite like those. Where we do events, which was the subject, of course, I spoke about earlier, making sure that they're properly recorded and properly edited and then put out either as videos on YouTube or as podcasts, things like that. I think we've got to accept that in the future, even our parliamentary clients are increasingly likely to access our products through Google or through some other search engine, rather than necessarily through the dedicated internal website that we've traditionally used as the vehicle. We already discovered this a little bit when we developed the EPRS app, and those of you who are interested in following our publications should download that app. Of course, it's free, and you just put in EPRS in the App Store. Many thousands of people have done it so far, and it's a fantastic library. But this is not just by way of advertisement, it's also to say that people quite like that notion that instead of having to go onto a website and use a search function in the website, that they just kind of push the button for the app and then it all comes up, and it's very, very easy, straightforward to use. So I would say that we have to experiment with these and other ways forward. And two other things that we've been trying to do during the course of the pandemic are interesting in this context. One is in-person briefing of members. We've always wanted to move in that direction, so that instead of all our research and information and so on, inquiries coming in written form, that we would say, or perhaps they still might come in that form, but being answered in written form, that we would offer as part of our standard product range the notion of an in-person briefing, like the conversation that we're having. And we found that some of these briefings really do take off. They start with the member, and then the member brings in their staff. And then maybe they want to have another one, which goes on a bit longer with more participants on their side. So that's been something that we've really experimented with for the first time, and which, actually, I'll leave it at that. That's the first kind of, but I think it's a very powerful example of the kind of the way that a necessity generates potentially something that's very useful.
And as you say, it also increases the diversity of your clientele and participants. So it really does offer an opportunity. Sonia, I think I'm ready to hand it back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Relly, and thank you to our panelists for that question and answer period. So our final panel today begins with someone who is close to home. I am happy to introduce Dr. Heather Lank, who is the Parliamentary Librarian at the Canadian Library of Parliament. Heather, take it away.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and thank you, colleagues, for this opportunity to speak about how Canada's Library of Parliament has been providing products and services during the pandemic, and about some of the plans that we have for the future, some as a consequence of this pandemic. Next slide, please. When the pandemic was declared in Canada in mid-March, the library reacted quickly to determine ways to achieve twin goals concurrently. The first was to provide clients with excellent products and services in a way that would meet emerging and changing public health guidelines. And the second, of course, was to safeguard our employees' health. it was clear that service delivery would have to occur in a way that would help to protect employees and other members of the parliamentary community from the virus. Fortunately, the library was well-resourced and well-positioned from the perspective of people, technology, and other factors to continue to serve parliamentarians, their staff, and the public. Next slide, please. Within days of adopting telework for all employees able to do so, we identified the products and services that could continue to be provided seamlessly, those that could be modified to meet the needs of parliamentarians and their staff, as well as the public, and those that would have to be temporarily suspended, which fortunately were quite few in number. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have continued to provide a broad range of products and services, including customized responses to individual requests by parliamentarians and their staff, support for Senate and House committees, as well as parliamentary associations, access to e-resources such as research databases, subject guides, and the catalog, and to our collection of audio, video, and transcripts of media, online information about how Parliament works and related educational resources, the Parliament of Canada Facebook and YouTube accounts that, among other things, provide video tours of the two main parliamentary buildings, the Senate of Canada building and the West Block, and the online request system that parliamentarians and their staff use to make requests, as well as public access to our information resources. Now, during the pandemic, the library has also launched some new products and services. And these include over 30 timely, succinct, and we believe very reliable research papers related to the virus and the pandemic from health, economic, social, environmental, international, and other perspectives. And these have proven to be very popular with our clients and with the public. We've also launched subject guides that provide parliamentarians with a curated, current list of COVID-19 related links. We have legislative summaries of key bills being considered by Parliament, many of which are focused on support for Canadians and businesses negatively affected by the pandemic. And we also launched a virtual experience of Parliament, which uses magic realism to allow viewers to experience Parliament's iconic centre block and parliamentary activities within its walls. And there have been, since this was launched some 6 months ago, over 60,000 views of this virtual experience, as well as 22,000 views of the online 2D experience. So our timing for online access to Parliament was fortuitous for sure. Now, some products and services have had to be modified during the pandemic, including access to our print collection, which, as many colleagues have noted, has led to an increased focus on e-resources. We also have a library ambassador program where employees of the library provide briefings to parliamentarians and their staff about our products and services. And those used to be done in person. They are now occurring through Skype or MS Teams. And we have also modified our library seminar program, which provides learning opportunities to the parliamentary community. And these are now occurring through MS Teams, which allows us to reach a broader audience, including parliamentary staff in constituency offices who previously would not have been able to participate and attend these events. Now, a few library services were or continue to be temporarily suspended. Still suspended are operations of the library's 5 branches, though retrievals from our print collection are being made by library staff in response to client requests. We have also had to suspend in-person shopping at our parliamentary boutique, though I'm very happy to say that just this week we have launched online shopping. And so innovation is very much part of the impact of this pandemic. And you can probably imagine that our guided tours of the Senate of Canada building and the West Block, in which the House of Commons is temporarily located, those tours are still suspended and we don't know yet when they will resume. To go to Fotis's point, there's still some uncertainty about where this will go, and the tours have not yet resumed. But we have resumed our interlibrary loans, which were suspended for some time, and the library's preservation lab, where there are where we bind publications, undertake preventive preservation, and engage in conservation activities. We have been able to resume those services with a cohort system of staff returning to the preservation lab. Next slide, please. The library's success in delivering products and services, despite the challenges of the pandemic, largely reflect three factors. One is the efforts of committed, adaptable, and resilient employees. Since March, they have embraced new products, methods, and technologies, enhanced Skype for Business, MS Teams, and Zoom, amongst others, to serve their clients, and they're trying innovative ways to remain in contact with their colleagues and to manage teams remotely. Secondly, we've been fortunate to have strong collaboration with our Senate and House of Commons partners to meet the needs of parliamentarians. Having a stable parliamentary computer network has allowed us to provide high quality and consistent service to clients, despite the challenges of the pandemic. And finally, our workforce largely had or was quickly provided with the equipment and other tools needed to work remotely, including external keyboards, mice, and monitors, and guidance about setting up ergonomic home workspaces. As the pandemic has gone on, we have expanded the equipment provided to employees for their home offices, including most recently desks. We have also invested in other types of support, including training on how to manage teams remotely and multiple initiatives to support employees' mental health. Next slide, please. Since mid-March, the library has learned that when faced with unexpected challenges, our institution is capable of innovation and we are indeed adaptable. Service is almost always possible, even though it may be provided in different ways. We continue to reflect on what has worked well and on what has not, and where we need to make additional efforts and investments. That said, a variety of initiatives are underway to ensure that if the same or a similar situation occurs in the future, we will be able to provide yet more services online. The innovation engendered by this public health crisis will continue. For example, we are exploring new or enhanced products, services, and collections that would supplement our current offerings and allow us to serve our clients better, regardless of their work location or of public health or other conditions. These initiatives include a continued focus on shifting from print to e-resources, expanded online educational tools, chat reference, video conference orientation sessions for parliamentarians and their staff, and indeed perhaps a virtual library with mini exhibits that can be accessed online. In addition, we are continuing to make IT and other investments designed to ensure teleworking and other capacities that will allow us to improve our service to parliamentarians, their staff, and the public, and to be well prepared for future challenges. Concerning a return to the workplace, following risk assessments and the implementation of measures designed to help ensure health and safety, some library employees have returned to the workplace on a reduced schedule. Risk assessments are underway for additional groups of employees. To date, the priority has been on those employees who are unable to work remotely. In returning to work, the advice provided by public health authorities and the approach of our Parliament Hill partners are important considerations as we resume suspended services, return more employees to the workplace, and continue to meet the needs of parliamentarians and other clients. Though we are planning for the eventual return to the workplace of our workforce, We also expect that telework will become a regular part of many employees' work lives, at least on a part-time basis. We are in the process of reviewing our telework policy accordingly, as well as taking advantage of what we have learned during the pandemic to update our business continuity plan, as Ian referred to earlier on today. Relationships, both internal among employees and external with our Parliament Hill partners, are fundamental to our ability to fulfill our mission to contribute to Canadian parliamentary democracy by creating, managing, and delivering authoritative, reliable, and relevant information and knowledge for Parliament. Regarding internal relationships, we are finding that the pandemic has had an unforeseen benefit. With the ability to interact with each other through Skype and MS Teams, employees from across the library's service areas are, sometimes unexpectedly, finding new opportunities to work together. The natural groupings that come from sharing physical space have been disrupted, and we have seen expanded collaboration. For example, the workplace risk assessments that are being done to bring employees from all parts of the library together. And many employees have had opportunities to connect with our IT and other support services that are instrumental in helping employees as they serve our clients. These new relationships enable a more comprehensive understanding of how everyone contributes to the library's success and how we can work together more closely in fulfilling the library's mission. The result is certain to be greater organizational strength. Similarly, we are thankful to have strong relationships with the administrations in the Senate and the House of Commons, who are also focused on providing parliamentarians with high quality service. In the midst of a pandemic, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to know what the world will look like when the public health crisis has passed. However, one thing is certain. The Library of Parliament will emerge as a permanently changed but stronger institution. The pandemic's legacy will be lasting. With a focus on clients, employees, and the future, the library will continue to adapt products, services, and modes of delivery to meet the evolving needs and practices of parliamentary clients, consistent with our commitment to relevance, agility, and a healthy workplace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heather. I'll move straight into our next presentation, and our next presenter is Jin-Hee Yoon. Jin-Hee is the Deputy Director of the Law Library Coordination Division at the Korean National Assembly Library. Jin-Hee?
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you, colleagues. I'm honored to participate in this event. Today, I'd like to talk about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the National Assembly Library, evolving information and services. The three main points of my presentation are changes in library services, untapped rising trend in library work, and the opportune information services. Next slide, please. This graph shows the number of confirmed cases per day. We had 1,064 cases of March 1st, which was the highest number of new patients for one day at a time. In the following 2 months, Korea's strategy worked remarkably well, and the daily cases were down to single digits by the end of April. Recently, however, the number of confirmed cases has been increasing again for various reasons. Still, we are exerting efforts to avoid recurrences of a high number of cases, despite bringing discomfort to all citizens. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought many changes to library operations as well. First, let us discuss access control and facility management. These two photos show our efforts in keeping the library safe. We take the visitors' body temperatures and create entry logs. We are also implementing strong distancing measures at the cafeteria. To prevent large gatherings, the lunch hour is divided into several time slots and is assigned to each team. As you can see in the picture, every table has a transparent screen divider. The COVID-19 pandemic also revised the way we perform work. We offered work from home arrangements and flexible hours to reduce the number of staff in the office. Next slide, please. The reading room service has also been modified. Reading room seats have been reduced by a third, and all users are required to wear a face mask at all times. As in the cafeteria, transparent screens are placed on each desk. We also provide hand sanitizers everywhere possible. Regardless of the level of social distancing, our reading rooms remain open for all library staff members and members of the National Assembly. The general public, however, is allowed it only when low-level social distancing is in place. Currently, we are closed to the general public. Next slide, please. The National Assembly Library is expanding non-face-to-face activities as part of our efforts to support the government's social distancing measures. These days, distancing measure level 2.5 is implemented at the library. At this level, no face-to-face event is permitted. Instead, we are holding seminars and events online. All step training is also provided online. The changes due to COVID-19 do not just cover library work. It has accelerated the untapped trend in the types of data that users prefer. Thus, we are expanding the use of various types of e-resources, such as e-book, e-journals, web DBs, and full-text DBs. Especially with full-text DBs, we've already built the largest full-text databases in Korea. Furthermore, the Korean government is planning a national project for the recovery of the economy after the COVID-19 crisis. The said project includes digital-related infrastructure, such as full-text DB buildings, and we are participating in the fulfillment of the project. Most full-text DBs consist of copyright-free materials like government publications. Thus, we could serve more enriched e-resources to users. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 outbreak has caused high demand for related information services. In our library, librarians, as well as legal and overseas information experts, accommodate such demands. On the right side of this slide are examples of our publications. Such information services are provided upon the request of lawmakers and their staff. We also try to determine policy trends and publish different reports preemptively. These reports and publications have been well received by the member of the National Assembly. Today, I shared with you the changes in the National Assembly Library of Korea operations amid the COVID-19 pandemic. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write me an email. You can find my email address on the first page of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jin-hee. Our final speaker, once again, is sorry that she couldn't join us in person. However, we did have a chance to record her presentation just a couple of days ago. So if you'll just be patient with us, we're going to switch over to a video, and this is a video of our colleague Paola Mandillo. She's the parliamentary officer and librarian with the Italian Chamber of Deputies.
Okay, good morning. My name is Paola Mandillo. I'm a parliamentary officer and a librarian at the Chamber of Deputies in Italy. And I'm going to speak about the library activities during the pandemic time. That is, of course, a difficult time, but that offers new opportunities for our libraries. In this first slide, I give you some information about the collections and the history of the library. And it's important to note that the library is an open public library. And since 2007, it's closely integrated with the Library of the Senate within the project for the creation of the Italian Joint Parliamentary Library. Next slide, please. Okay, the impact of the pandemic on the library. Service and procedures in the library changed a lot during the COVID-19 crisis time. And this is, of course, depending on the development of the pandemic and on the different emergency measures adopted by the Italian government in response to the COVID-19 infection, the spread of the infection in the country. The time crisis for the library can be divided in 3 phases. The first phase, that we can call the first lockdown, that started at the beginning of March and continued until mid-June. In this phase, the library was closed to the general public and all the library staff work remotely. The second phase, that we can call the phase of the reopening of the library on-site services, started on mid-June and continued until the beginning of November. In this phase, in this second phase, we have to provide a new organization of in-person services. For example, limiting numbers of users allowed to access the library, applying social distancing measures, and setting up new procedures for the request of books. During this time, 60% of library staff work at the office and 40% work at home, taking turns. The third phase, that we can call the new library closure, started at the beginning of November and is continuing until now, is the present phase. The library is closed to the general public and library staff work 50% at the office and 50% remotely. Next slide. Okay, these are the greatest challenges for the library. Especially during the first phase, the first lockdown, was very difficult to keep the cooperation between the 2 parliamentary libraries, the Chamber of Deputies and Senate libraries, because it was very difficult to take decision quickly at the beginning of the pandemic and decide together how to guarantee an homogeneous service to MPs. But now the 2 libraries started to reopen a constructive dialogue in order to guarantee homogeneous services to MPs. Another important challenge in this phase is the problem of external users, because as reflected in the graphs, the external users' access to the library had a significant reduction during the pandemic. If you can see the red line that shows the external user access in 2020 compared to the external user access on 2019, you can see a big difference of access. But we can also observe that the book request did not change too much compared to the same months in 2019. And this is probably due to the strong decrease in the access of undergraduate students that usually study on their own books. And so we can observe that students are the most affected category of users during this pandemic. And we are thinking about starting an advertising campaign on the website of the library to encourage attendance of external users when the library will reopen again. Another challenges that we found in this time is the problem of managing new procedures to guarantee access to the library. For example, the problem of the access to collection, because was possible when in the second phase from June to November, the access to collection was possible for users only by appointment, and users could request a book only the day before the scheduled access to the library. And it was a little difficult to manage the bureaucracy of daily email requests. And it was also difficult in some cases to ensure compliance of anti-COVID-19 rules in the library, because some users were reluctant to wear face covering and to maintain physical distancing for all the time they were in the library. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have the unexpected innovation during the pandemic. Okay, especially during the second phase, we improved the monitoring of users' information needs, because we manage all the emails sent from external users with requests of books, so we can have a better understanding of different users' profiles. During the second phase, we also launched a new online form for book requests. And this means a simplification of procedures that we can keep also after the pandemic time. During the library's closure for the pandemic, we also launched another service that is called Exceptional Document Delivery Service. So the users can order 3 documents maximum, with a maximum of 50 pages in total, and the library will send these documents by email as soon as possible. If the library's closure will continue in the next months, we are thinking about allowing users to ask for more than 3 documents, maybe 6 documents maximum. During the pandemic time, we also had a big innovation. So we decided to implement the library's collection of e-books. For example, we acquired a new e-books database that is called EBSCO for e-books in English. And as you can see in the graphs, in the slide, there was a reduction in 2020, the red line, compared to 2019, the blue line, in both the requests for foreign legislation and the Italian legislation research products. However, the requests were processed easily in these difficult times, even working remotely. And that was possible because the IT department of the Chamber of Deputies ensured the access to intranet databases to all personnel very quickly and easily. Next slide, please. Okay, to conclude, these are the 2 main expected long-term changes for the library. First, the implementation of digital resources, both by providing new databases available on the intranet and also providing more online resources available on the library website. And second, the administration will probably encourage in the future the use of the tool of remote working, and for some Chamber of Deputies personnel, and the library will benefit on this tool, having experience that is a good solution, especially for some activities. Thank you for your attention, and please, if you have any question, you can write me at my email address that you can see in the slide. Thank you.
So thank you to Paula for that presentation and to Ellie for her support in recording it. And we're into our final question and answer period. So given, of course, that Paula submitted by video, we'll ask you to direct your questions to Heather or to Jin Hee in this session. Ellie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sonia. So I am intrigued by something that Paola said in her presentation regarding the analysis of the users, in particular the external users. And she mentioned that they were looking for ways to promote the services to the external users, and in particularly to students. So my question to Jinhee and to Heather is, given that so many of your own employees are also homeschooling during the pandemic, I wondered whether that had any impetus for you to look at what online services you were providing that could be used in an educational setting for schooling, whether even at the elementary level, but perhaps at the high school or even the higher education level.
Thank you for that question, Ellie. And in fact, we did exactly that. And interestingly, we had planned to launch a traveling classroom program with a set of goggles and an opportunity to experience Parliament virtually in the classroom. But as you can imagine, because of the pandemic, the time would not be appropriate for us to be sending equipment around the country where people would be putting things onto their faces and potentially creating infection. And so the team actually pivoted and took the lesson plans and the various tools that they had developed for the traveling classroom and adapted them to the online 360 video that I referred to in my presentation. And so actually significantly enhanced our online resources for learning about Parliament. And we've had tens of thousands of views of those tools since they were launched. So they're, because of the homeschooling and indeed even teachers looking for ways to access online tools, we've really been able to leverage the pandemic to enhance the access to online resources across the country and indeed around the world. So yeah, we very much have invested in that. And to be honest, we expect to continue to do that in the coming months and the coming years, because it really is such a huge benefit to parents, teachers, Canadians, students, everybody to learn online. So yes, absolutely, we have done that. And I'm happy to say it's been very, very successful.
Excellent, thank you. Jinhee, I wonder if there's any educational outreach from your service.
Thank you for the interest. Let me take it this way. What about email me your question, please? Then I will answer them with details.
Whether you have increased your any outreach to educational audiences for school children or university audiences by providing virtual resources for them to learn more about what Parliament is doing or the research services that you have.
Jinhee, if I understand correctly, you would prefer if we send that question to you by email?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely, we can do that. There is one question in the Q&A.
Yes.
Want to hop to
Yeah.
that? Okay.
again from our colleague from Argentina. In my opinion, in some countries, not only the uncertainty of the beginning of the pandemic, but also later, after many months and at present, not too many efforts have been made to rehabilitate physical access to many public services, including services of library and parliamentary research. In contrast, in other experiences, physical services were enabled but limited in volume and applying a series of security protocols. In particular, I'd like to know how the supply and demand capacity of these services is managed. How do the booking services work for physical access to libraries or personal interviews with researchers? Heather?
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, colleagues, for the question. First of all, with respect to the protocols, I think one of the things we have learned in our context is how demanding it is to put in place the requirements for a safe physical return to our spaces. And because of the amount of work that it does take to put in place what is required under Canadian law, under our occupational health and safety laws, we have kept to a bare minimum the number of people allowed back into our spaces. And so our branches remain closed, and only a very limited number of library staff are allowed to go into our actual workspaces to retrieve documents and books and so on. So it is very, very limited, and it's done by clearly identified library staff. And if we are to go into the office, we have to inform library security of when we will be there, so that any contact tracing that might be required after the fact can easily be undertaken. So it's very, very carefully managed. And we are certainly not rushing the physical return to the workspace because we want to be sure that we do respect all of those protocols. In terms of personal interviews with researchers, those are done virtually. We have either phone, MS Teams, Skype, and other technologies that allow those contacts to occur virtually. And so the physical contact between our clients and ourselves is really being almost completely replaced for the time being by virtual connections with our clients. And so it's only when the public health conditions permit that we will return to any kind of personal interviews face to face. But we're very fortunate that we've got the technology in place that allows quite easy access to all of our clients through phone, internet, email, and other platforms. So far that's worked quite well. But I do want to emphasize how challenging we have found it to put in place the health and safety provisions that are required to mitigate any risks with respect to a physical return.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you, Ellie. And so I just want to say thank you once again. I'm noticing that we're just over the 2-hour mark. So I think at this point, it's a good time to thank once again all of our presenters, and thanks to the VE team, and also to all of you for attending today. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on this session, as well as your ideas for future sessions. And so with that, I will close this first IFLAPARL virtual event. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you, Juan.